in for risk-based qualification?
Yes, we can.
Yeah.
And let me know if you're seeing the slide presentation or the actual meeting notes. Looks like it's.
We're seeing the next slide on the right-hand side at the same time.
All right.
So you'll want to take it in a different presentation mode. Yeah.
Yeah. Let me apologize. Here. Should be screen 2. Okay, just seeing the one slide now. Hello?
I'm not. I'm just seeing you.
Yeah, we're only seeing you so far.
Well, technology is doing splendid this evening. We were actually just had a BSI microbiology audit today and had some technology issues there. So it seems to just
if you
be
go over the middle, you should see your share content. Hopefully, the up arrow.
Yes, I was sharing my sharing the screen. I hit share screen and then at least that's correct screen. And then now let's try this again. There we go. I think we got it this time.
Looks good.
Okay, I appreciate everyone's patience. Good evening, all. My name is Jarod Markley. I am a senior quality engineer now with Integra Life Sciences. This is day 2. It was previously ACell Inc. Based in Lafayette. We are in actually day 2 of our acquisition by Integra Life Sciences. ACell it manufactures porcine urinary bladder matrices for use in regenerative medicine. My background, I have a Bachelor of Science in Biomedical Engineering from Rose-Hulman. I have 10 plus years of experience in medical device, pharmaceuticals, and biotherapeutics, and now biologics. So tonight's presentation is going to be on risk-based qualification and really focusing on right-sizing the efforts to add value through integration of quality risk management systems and quality risk management into the qualification practice. So agenda and topics for this evening. Not sure everyone's background, so it'll be pretty high level exposure into qualification, the history of more of the background and the traditional qualification and validation approaches, and the push towards integrated risk-based qualification. And so we'll have what is commissioning, qualification, and validation? Why do we have to do it? Historical practices, the paradigm shift, going from a leverage to an integrated quality risk management process. Some details into what a quality risk management integrated process is and how that is executed. And then we'll have a conclusion with a Q&A, but please feel free to ask questions anytime during the presentation if you do so have a question. So what is commissioning, qualification, and validation? So high level, commissioning, and this is across the industry. So caveat that this will heavily be oriented towards medical device, my medical background in medical device experience, but it can be applied to a majority of industries, and then obviously the different regulations required for each industry. And a lot of this information was pulled from a Connects webinar on integrated risk management qualification process. But commissioning is a well-planned, documented, managed engineering approach to the startup and turnover of facilities, utilities, and equipment to the end user that results in a safe and functional environment meeting the established design requirements and the stakeholders' expectations. So then the qualification process is to demonstrate and document that the critical manufacturing facilities, systems, and utilities are suitable for their intended purpose. Validation is establishing through documented evidence that provides a high degree of assurance that the specification, the specific processes will consistently produce product meeting the predetermined specifications. And verification is the activity that is performed within the commissioning and qualification process, documenting the manufacturing facilities, utilities, systems, and equipment are suitable for intended purpose. So those are the high-level terms that'll be used throughout this evening. And there'll be some other acronyms and everything that'll be used. So if you have any questions about any terminology, please don't hesitate to ask. So why do we have to do it? Within the medical device industry, it is required by regulations. So for instance, FDA 21 CFR 820.70, we have our production and process controls. Specifically, subsection G states that for equipment is that each manufacturer shall ensure that all equipment used in the manufacturing process meets the specified requirements and is appropriately designed, constructed, placed, and installed to facilitate maintenance, adjustment, cleaning, and use. So very, very high level, not defining what those requirements are, but just saying that manufacturers shall ensure that the equipment meets all of the needs, the specific needs, appropriately. Moving on into section 75, specifically the process validation, subsection A, where the results of a process cannot be fully verified by subsequent inspection and test, the process shall be validated with a high degree of assurance, approving according to the established procedures. So the validation activities and results, including the date and signature of the individuals approving the validation, where appropriate, the major equipment validated shall be documented. And then moving into international standards, 1345/2016, validation of process for production and service provision. Organization shall validate any processes for the production and service of provision where the resulting output cannot be verified by the subsequent monitoring or measurement. And as a consequence, deficiencies would become apparent only after the product is in use by the end user or the service has been delivered. So if you can't verify, you have to validate. That is specifically what that is stating. And then obviously within other industries, the specific regulations within those industries, a lot of this fits well within software as well, within any safety regulated industry. I'm sure automotive, aviation. So the historical practice. So the standard, and this is even back into early thousands, has been what's known as the V model. So with as you can see here on the left-hand side of the V, it's within the design phase of your process, and so you have the creation of your user requirements, functional design specifications, detailed design specifications, and once you have all of those, then you get into the build phase. And so within that, in the build phase, you can go back and fine tune and add within the user requirements, and that then feeds into having to update your functional specifications and your detailed design specifications. And so getting into the first part of the commissioning and qualification process, which would be your FAT or factory acceptance test. And that's heavily reliant on vendor documentation and vendor execution. But historically, once that FAT was complete, all of that, the equipment was signed off from the factory acceptance test. Then the equipment gets crated up and delivered to the facility, where it goes through all of that once again for the site acceptance test. And so a lot of duplicated efforts within the historical V model process. A lot of inconsistencies in the terminology, because what was being, a lot of overlap between commissioning and what really would be a qualification efforts. And then moving into the installation, the IQ, OQ, PQ phases of the qualification of equipment and processes. A lot of those efforts were then verified again, drawings and IOs as part of the installation qualification, spare parts and manuals, and so a lot of burdensome activities with no real value add. So that was the historical V model process. Shown in a different manner, in the historical process, quality risk management was not incorporated. So your process performance indices, PPK, critical quality attributes, critical process parameters, those were not well understood or well documented. And so there was a lot of activities built around user requirements and those upfront document deliverables without really understanding the end process and how that impacts critical quality attributes of the product and critical processing parameters of equipment in the process. So with that, in alignment with that, the risk to product quality was not appropriately identified or assessed or controlled within the historical models. And then the testing was also not commensurate with the risk. Again, it was in a everything gets tested kind of practice. You had to verify every single line item of a requirement, because if it's a requirement, then it's important. Irrespective of its impact to product quality, to patient safety, and also in not only in its functional application, but also in the individuals executing the commissioning and qualification activities. With engineering and quality in the historical process, they're really siloed activities, and quality is more of the police to the engineering activities, the gatekeeper, and it was engineering, kind of engineering versus quality, not a strong partnership with between engineering and quality. So there's a lot of quality being the oversight for engineering deliverables, and then there's a handoff of those deliverables to the quality that then quality re-executes a majority of those test cases within the historical model of a commissioning and qualification process. So this is pretty inefficient with all the redundancies, and as I stated earlier, it's kind of a test everything approach. If someone can mute, getting a lot of feedback there, please. Thank you. So from historical practice, a lot of best practices were developed a lot of the organizations such as ASQ and ISPE and others, you have your leadership within those developing best practices. And so going from the standard V model that had been used for years to really focusing on risk. And that's been a shift in a lot of the regulations of late, is what is the actual risk to the product, the risk to the patient, and really assessing assessing a change, assessing the requirements for verification and validation activities solely based on the risk. So really going from so in this part we'll discuss the pros and cons between the historical leveraged model of the V model and integrated with quality risk management process in the commissioning and qualification phase. So from a leverage process, commissioning and qualification were standalone testing. What would happen, like I said earlier, what would happen a lot is that your commissioning activities that would occur in FAT, at a factory acceptance test, would then be re-executed in the qualification process. Or if anything, and why it's called leveraged, a lot of times it would say, oh, well, it was completed in FAT, so refer back to that execution. However, there's a lot of times during the execution of factory acceptance tests and site acceptance tests that a lot of punch list items are identified, and issues that are discovered when initial systems are implemented, and more runtime is gained on those assets. And so there's still a phase of discovery and the startup. So there's a lot of times during the commissioning and early stages of qualification that there's some additional information garnered and learned from the equipment. And so the historical process, you'd have to basically repeat any of that work. So with an integrated process, it's taking that commissioning and qualification and really pulling in and integrating those activities through an assessment of risk and value add in the execution. Commissioning was devalued in the leveraged V model, just that redundancy again. And here in the integrated, commissioning is fundamental. So essentially, it's the basis for the functionality of the equipment, verifying that it meets the user needs, and once that's met, that activity is done. It's not needed to be re-executed in any of the qualification phases. Historically, as I said, engineering was engineering versus quality. With an integrated, it's building a partnership between engineering and quality. That quality is involved at the very, very beginning of the process, and so it's not a 11th hour and quality gets involved and quality has to be the bad guys. It's building a strong partnership between R&D, engineering, and quality, and really making strong data-driven decisions up front within the process. So, yep, that's already hit it on that. The quality was kind of the gatekeeper to engineering. And in the integrated process, good engineering practices are enabled through the integrated process. And then on the leveraged, engineering and quality, we're really focused on non-critical systems. It was a lot of busy work. I can remember when I started in industry and the V model was still widely used. just binders and binders of commissioning and qualification work that then gets scanned and filed and lives and just collects dust. So really there was no true value add. It was to tick a box that an activity was done. So in terms of deliverables and timelines, it was negatively impacting the timeline when those resources could be allocated towards more important functions. And so, right, leading into that with an integrated, so engineering is focused on the delivery of the system. With the integrated approach, it is really on what matters on the equipment, what are the key critical aspects of a system to bring that online within a facility. Again, redundant testing and integrated value, it's all only value-added testing, driving value add through execution. Some language around the quality risk management process. So critical quality attribute, physical, chemical, biological, or microbiological property. That's a characteristic that should be within an appropriate limit, range, or distribution to ensure the desired product quality. Critical process parameter, parameter whose variability has an impact on the critical quality attribute and therefore should be monitored or controlled to ensure that the process provides a desired quality. Quality by design is a systemic approach to development that begins with predefined objectives and emphasizes the product and process understanding and process control. So based on the sound science and quality risk management. So this is where a lot is put up front into the design phase and really driving process knowledge and the upfront portions of development. A critical aspect. So it's typically functions, features, and abilities, performance characteristics necessary for a process and system to ensure consistent product quality and patient safety. And then control strategies. So it's a planned set of controls derived from current product and process understanding that assures the process performance and product quality. The controls can include parameters or attributes related to drug substance, drug product, materials, components, facility, equipment, operating conditions, in-process controls, finished product specifications, and associated methods and frequency for monitoring and control. And then critical design element. So it's a design function or feature of a system that's necessary to consistently manufacture products within desired quality. There we go. So looking at it in a visual manner, the key of quality by design are the four boxes there. Here, product knowledge, process knowledge, regulatory requirements, and then the company quality requirements. So knowing the boundaries within that you operate within design, knowing your heavy with your product knowledge and your process knowledge, understanding your performance indices and your capabilities, and really around this with risk and establishing what your specifications are needed to be in this phase, so you can appropriately define having that understanding and that knowledge. That way, then moving into the subsequent phases sets you up for success. So. GEP, good engineering practice, that is the overarching umbrella to this practice of quality by design, feeding into your requirements, specification and design, verification, acceptance and release, then to operations and continuous improvement. Within all of that, you still are executing under quality risk management, design review, and change management. So all of those system level programs within your organization work together with the quality by design to form the integrated quality risk management process, and driving really more efficient process for qualification and validation activities. So to continue the roles and responsibilities, as I said before, quality and engineering were reviewed very, very siloed. It was always the bad cop mentality, and that really has shifted within industry, and a lot of organizations have really focused on building solid partnerships between operations and quality, because they go hand in hand. Operations keeps the lights on, quality keeps the doors open. Without operations and without selling product, quality couldn't do their job. Without quality doing their job and keeping the systems and the products meeting specification and meeting all regulations, then that allows operations to continue in their manufacture. So really, it's developing that strong partnership, and so that's then it is exemplified in the quality risk management process as well. So with engineering, their focus is, or rather, their role is the delivery of the system, and so their focus with that is its fitness for use in its application, based on their user needs. And so that, going back to the terms discussed up front, it's simply verification, commissioning, qualification activities. It is an activity verifying and testing and documenting that it meets its intended use. So then quality, the role is really focused on the product quality, and with that, understanding the impact to risk. So the focus on what are your process capabilities, PPK, your risk control strategies. So what is your overarching risk management system, understanding harms and hazards of your device, in a failure modes. So a lot of the GFMEAs, PFMEAs, and how that feeds into use of device, and so then system design, and verification, and so the quality's overarching responsibility is really just that oversight, and ensuring that everything meets muster. Perhaps. There we go. So another visual way to look at this is you have your inputs to your commissioning and qualification process. So you have your product risk assessment and control strategy. Then that feeds what are your critical quality attributes of your products, which then what are your critical processing parameters of your equipment and processes, and then all of the regulatory, organizational, site, operational, EH&S requirements that feed into the generation of your user requirements. So again, that it's taking all of that process knowledge, that product knowledge, the regulatory body knowledge, And again, it says here, health and safety, right? So it's not only of the regulatory bodies that standard regulatory bodies that you would think of, but for manufacturing of medical devices, but OSHA, making sure that large pieces of equipment are appropriately qualified and safe for operational use. So all that feeds into the user requirements, and then so that gets it into the design or the definition phase of requirements. So then into the system classification, and really that classification, we'll discuss a little more on the next slide. But what is the risk? Really assessing the risk to product, to patient, with that individual system. And these can be broken down into the high-level system and then also the individual subsystems within a piece of equipment. Moving on into the system risk assessment, and we'll get into a little more detail on that in a minute. And then to your design requirements, design qualification, into your commissioning and qualification, testing and documentation. So it's a lot of planning, assessment, development, and then getting into actual verification task activities and all traceability. And you see, I mean, it again has some of the iterative process within, but there's a lot more upfront, stressed up front in the integrated process. And then once all that commissioning, qualification, testing, and documentation is complete, then progresses on to acceptance and release, to operations, and then you get into the standard life cycle, periodic review, change management, and control. Get into the continuous improvement. So system classification. So this is where, again, it's tries to identify the system, whether a system has direct impact on product quality, and as I stated, it's based on the system boundaries for integrated testing. So you can look at the subsystem, however those systems are appropriately defined in your case. So kind of these are just examples of questions that you can ask. But does your system contain CAs or CDEs that or perform functions to serve or meet one of the more process requirements of your critical quality attributes, including your critical process parameters? Does the system have direct impact or direct contact with product or process stream, which would have contact and have potential to impact the final product quality or pose a risk to the patient? Does this system provide an excipient, or does it produce an ingredient or a solvent? So water generation, and could that quality and so the compliance with the required specifications thereof of that substance impact the final quality of the product, or again pose a risk to the patient? Is the system used in a high risk situation such as cleaning, sanitizing, sterilization, and could that malfunction of the system result in failure to adequately clean, sanitize, or sterilize, which would obviously impose a risk to the patient? Does the system use or produce data? So looking into electronic records, as part of 21 CFR Part 11 and the EU GAMP4 volume Annex 11. So, and does the system provide container closure? So this would be your sterile barrier systems, or product protection, and failure of which would again pose a risk to the patient or degradation to the product, breaking that sterile barrier. And then does the system provide product identification information, so your lot numbering, expiry, serialization, counterfeit, protection measures, and without independent verification of which that system used to verify that information. So the system classification, classifying whether it's the high risk, kind of going through any of those questions. Obviously, if it meets, the answer is yes to any of those. There you have to appropriately test to verify that all of those are controlled and validated. But if not, if it's a simple system that has no impact, then the qualification activities, are minimal, and minimal, if at all, required. So system risk assessment, this is central to the integrated approach, defining the risk to the product quality, identifying the control measures, the risk controls, what is the instrument and alarm criticality, and it really links the verification activities to the process and product quality controls, and provides rationale for the commissioning and qualification strategy. So assessing a system's risk, like what risk does that system pose to the product, to the patient, by really taking the time to deep dive into that assessment. It's really going to build a strong foundation for what testing will need to be performed during the commissioning and qualification process and phase. So the benefit of a system risk assessment, it really drives the focus of the design review and design qualification phases, as well as defines the control strategy for the process risk, and focuses quality on product quality, critical design, and then focuses the commissioning and qualification to ensure the controls are in place and tested, and ensures traceability of the qualification summary to life cycle activities and verification once that system gets released to operations. So, kind of looking at it in a different way. All the feeders, so roles and responsibilities here in yellow, R&D, tech ops. So heavy in your engineering, your process knowledge, your product knowledge. This is where you're looking at what are your known process performances, your PPKs, your risk assessment, putting that effort up front, allows you then to create and develop your list of critical quality attributes, critical process parameters, and then so in that's your process development phase, and quality is that oversight as discussed earlier. Then your subject matter experts, following good engineering practices. You have your design review. It's going to be your list of your CDEs and your DQs, design qualification. Again, quality, that oversight. In the verification planning phase, that's where the brunt of the commissioning and qualification planning takes place. And so putting a lot of that effort into the planning phase and focusing that on all of the information from the quality by design in the previous phases, to then move into verification testing, where that's, go forth and be fruitful in FAT, SAT, commissioning, startup, and functional testing. This is really just, this is debug phase for a lot. There's a lot of iterative process. So not only in the equipment world, but it would be similar to agile methodologies for software, where you're working out bugs, and you're having daily your daily scrum, and you're going through and seeing what needs to be tested. Same thing with equipment. You have your daily shift startup meeting, and here's your bullet. Here's all of your action items for the day of issues discovered. But this is a lot of iterative testing within the commissioning and qualification phase, and that's where it said we're really making that an integrated process, and having that being just an independent subject matter expert review really then allows resources to focus on the value added effort. So it's, quality doesn't have to be hand-holding engineering during this. This is, making sure it meets all of the requirements. And then you get into the true, performance testing, ensuring all of the CQAs, CPPs are executed and verified appropriately through qualification and validation activities. And then, obviously, once successful completion of those activities, approved by quality and released into operations. Apologize on the little blurriness of this, but kind of just going back and giving a high level review of the shift from the historical approach of the redundant testing, non-value added testing, to an integrated approach driven by quality risk management. So commissioning and qualification testing, qualification protocols, and the historical approach that were executed at the project end, and with the testing being redundant to the engineering life cycles. With the application of good engineering practices, we shift that into the new approach of the integrated, and so the qualification process becomes integrated into the engineering project without non-value added redundant testing. So stripping out the fluff, trimming it down appropriately, and really driving actions based on where most value is needed, and that's in alignment with risk. Requirements. So in the historical approach, the qualification testing was based on equipment specifications and capabilities, not on really what mattered in terms of, yes, that matters in terms of the capabilities of your equipment and your OEEs, but that really doesn't impact the product quality. And so with the application of quality risk management, testing is now focused on what are the systems controls and detection mechanisms and quality systems to verify that the product quality is appropriately met. Historical approach for design, that the review was really applied inconsistently with unstructured involvement from quality. So with the application of a systemic design review, your design review is well directed and with clearly defined involvement from the quality role. So that enables the appropriate and defensible oversight. Again, it's bringing quality into the fold a lot earlier into the process, making them a partner in the development phase. So then that way, it is a truly integrated approach, and there's not going to be any surprises, because no one hates it more than getting halfway done with more than halfway done with a project, and then someone from quality gets involved and pumps the brakes and says it's not doesn't meet the requirements, or there's some unidentified risk. So really driving that out and bringing quality into the fold. And then change management, something near and dear to my heart. Historical approach. Changes weren't well controlled or documented until the system was qualified and released for use. And so it was like not following the change management process. New requirements being added without having been communicated, and so you have different expectations from leadership, because they made a passing comment to a supplier of a system, and so when that system gets brought in and doesn't meet their expectations, well, those expectations were never appropriately communicated or documented, and so there's a disconnect there. So with the application of engineering change management, all those changes within the commissioning and qualification process get effectively documented and managed and integrated as that, which that drives the subsequent testing based on any newly added critical to quality attributes or critical process parameters with that impacted change. So again, it just prevents the need to perform redundant testing at the project end. And that concludes the presentation. What I have very, again, kind of high level, but open to any questions or ask about any specific examples that you might have any questions on. Let me see who we still have here.
Hello, Jarod. This is Ed Moss. I have a question.
Yes.
I agree that the change management has been one of the more difficult things to control at times, and wanted to find out if you had any examples of good systems for monitoring change management, or what you might recommend there.
Sure. So I actually manage our change control system in our facility, and so really ours is integrated into the whole process. So and with that, specifically within the change management, we have assessment of risk at every level. So quality performs an impact of a risk assessment within the change control, as well as our partners in regulatory affairs. So any change that we have goes through, typically goes through that process. And so we control it through procedurally. And so that's how from an operational standpoint. From a design and more of the design and commissioning phases, having a formalized process within within those phases, I think is important as well. Yeah, I would just say, I mean, it just needs to be a formalized, controlled process.
Is there a certain software that you use, or just Excel spreadsheet, or?
So we use in ACell master control. So it was originally our document management system, but they have a process module called MOC, which is management of change, and that allows, and fairly customizable as well, to create specific fields and assessments and forms that you can link to those changes. And then, but I've also worked in a paper-based process that when I worked at BD, it was surprisingly still a paper-based change control process that just went to a weekly change review board and got logged, and any time that that got modified, it was just a living document. And tracked through that was for that, in that instance, that was tracked through Excel.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions? All right. Well, I appreciate everyone's time this evening. To kind of touch base on what Scott had discussed earlier, looking at the rest of our program for the spring. I think for February, we'll be having someone discuss supplier quality. And then I have reached out to someone at Catalent down in Bloomington, where they are manufacturing COVID-19 vaccine, to present on the manufacture of the vaccine and what COVID-19 has done to high-level operations, and how that has shifted a lot of manufacturers and how manufacturers have been impacted. So hopefully we can have that individual present in March. But again, if anyone has any topics that they would like to present on, or knows anyone that would be interested to present, please just reach out to the section leadership, and we would greatly appreciate that.
All right, great job, Jarod. Learned a few things that I did not know or weren't aware of, and reinforced some things that I was aware of. So thank you very much.
Excellent, thank you.
I think that's one of the big things that I love so much about ASQ, is that those two things happen in every meeting that I'm at, and that's fantastic.
Excellent springboard and develop best practices and find out what works well in places and what doesn't work, and you get to learn from a lot of folks, and so that's invaluable information for sure.
So you touched on the spring semester, or the spring session, whatever we're going to call it. So yeah, if anyone is interested, please reach out, let us know. If there's something that you are interested in or would like to hear about, have somebody present on, we can go to work and do some researching as well on that. And we would be more than happy to present that for you as well. If there's no more comments or nobody has any more questions, I think we'll go ahead and close up the meeting for tonight. Everybody, please have a safe, happy, healthy rest of your January and into February. And we will see you all in February. Thanks, guys.
And then this is Bob Funk. I was just going to say I may be able to help out with some presentation later during the spring too, potentially.
Excellent.
Perfect. Bob, why don't you go ahead and shoot an email to the board and let us know what you'd be interested in presenting, and we'll get that on the docket.
I appreciate that. Thank you.
Definitely.
Thank you. All right. Thanks, Scott. Thanks, everyone, for joining this evening. Appreciate it. Have a wonderful rest of your evening.
Thank you.
Thank you, Jarod.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Thank you. Bye.
Good night, everybody.